straight. 95% of people won't say it, but they do. According to a study from the University of Michigan, as people age, their self-awareness of their behavior declines, leading to habits that unintentionally alienate others. There are things that seem harmless, a small complaint, a habit of talking over others, or outdated views imposed on the younger generation, but over time, they become invisible barriers in relationships. No one wants to admit it, but sometimes these behaviors cause older women to be viewed in ways they don't want to be seen. Age is not a barrier to charm or likability. The important thing is to recognize what needs to change so that you don't accidentally make yourself an annoying person in the eyes of others. Mom, why haven't you called me so often lately? A seemingly simple question, but full of emotions. Many older people withdraw into themselves, waiting for others to take the initiative to care, then silently feel sad when no one asks them what they want. But did you know, being silent for too long does not make others realize that you are lonely. It just makes them more reluctant to start a conversation. According to an 80-year study of human happiness by Harvard University, people who maintain good social connections as they age have better mental and physical health, and live an average of 7-10 years longer than those who isolate themselves. I once met Linda Johnson, a 72-year-old Irish American living in Boston. She said that after her husband died, she gradually stopped contacting her friends for fear of bothering them, but that silence actually made the relationship more distant. When she decided to take the initiative to join a book club, her life changed completely. She made new friends, felt younger, and had fewer lonely nights. This distance doesn't always come from indifference from children or friends. Sometimes, it's simply because no one knows what the other person is expecting. A study from the University of Michigan found that people's ability to self-awareness of their behavior decreases with age, making them less aware of the habits that are affecting their relationships. If you don't want your relationship to fade away, be proactive. A text message asking how you are, an invitation to go for a walk, or even just a smile when you see each other can break the silence that neither of you wants. But sometimes, distance comes not just from being withdrawn, but from rigid ideas that unintentionally put us outside the flow of modern life. Richard Matthews, a 78-year-old former American teacher, once said that he felt alienated from his own grandchildren because they were always glued to their phones. Instead of trying to understand technology, he kept complaining and saying that things were better back then. As a result, his grandchildren gradually talked to him less. But then, when he tried to learn how to use FaceTime to video call them, everything changed. He said that for the first time, his grandchildren were excited to show him how to use emojis and send stickers. And thanks to that, he no longer felt like an old man behind. That shows that being open to new things does not mean losing yourself or giving up your core values. It is simply a way to shorten the gap between generations. In addition to being conservative in thinking, another thing that makes the gap between us and others grow is the habit of correcting them too much. When we are young, we teach our children every word, every behavior. But when they grow up, continuing to correct everything from the way they talk to their views on life can make them feel judged and reserved when communicating. A study by the University of California shows that people who are often corrected in their words or actions tend to withdraw, share less, and even feel pressured and stressed when talking to people who often correct them. Susan, a 65-year-old Vietnamese American woman living in Texas, said that her daughter-in-law used to say that she rarely wanted to talk to her because her mother always finds fault with her, from the way she cooks to the way she raises her children. When she realized that and tried to listen more instead of correcting, her mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship changed in a more positive direction. Similarly, there is a habit that many older people have without realizing it, apologizing indiscriminately. According to a Stanford University study, people who frequently apologize in unnecessary situations tend to have lower self-esteem and make others feel awkward. I'm sorry for talking too much. Sorry for bothering you. I'm old and clumsy. Sorry. These sentences not only make the other person feel awkward, but also unintentionally make us feel weak in the conversation. Instead of apologizing, try using more positive expressions. If you feel like you've said too much, instead of saying sorry for talking too long, try thank you for listening. If you accidentally forget something, instead of sorry, I'm old and forgot, say I'll try to remember next time. Just a small change in the way you express yourself is enough to make you feel more confident and make the other person feel more comfortable. None of us want to be a pain in the ass, but sometimes unconscious habits can create distance between us and the people who love us the most. Age does not determine a person's worth, but how we treat ourselves and the world around us will determine how others treat us. If Linda was able to find joy again by proactively connecting, if Richard was able to get closer to his grandchildren by learning how to use technology, if Susan improved her relationship with her daughter-in-law by simply listening more than surely, any of us can make changes to have a gentler, warmer life, because everyone deserves to be loved, no matter what age. There is a fine line between sincere feedback and hurtful criticism. As we get older, we tend to comment on everything from the way others look, dress, to their lifestyle. These comments, whether well-intentioned or just habitual, can hurt the listener. According to research from the Institute of Behavioral Psychology, frequent criticism not only reduces self-confidence, but also causes others to gradually avoid communication. A woman once shared that her daughter had been calling home less and less. When asked why, her daughter replied, "You always have something to criticize me about." It was only when she heard these words that she realized that her concern had become a pressure on her daughter. Since she focused on more positive things, the conversation between mother and daughter has become more natural and comfortable. Sometimes, a compliment or simply a timely silence has more bonding power than sincere suggestions. But silence is not always the solution when it comes to important issues such as finances, health, and future plans. Many older adults choose to avoid them. They don't want to discuss wills, don't share about their illnesses, don't talk about their wishes when old age comes. A survey shows that 60% of people over 65 have never discussed these plans with their children, leading to confusion and difficulty when an emergency arises. A man did not want to mention his illness, thinking that if he kept quiet, everything would be fine. When his health declined, his family fell into chaos because no one knew what kind of treatment he wanted, who would take care of him, how his assets would be divided. If only he had the courage to face reality sooner, things could have been easier for both himself and those around him. Taking the initiative to share is not an admission of weakness, but an act of love and responsibility. Avoidance does not only appear in big decisions, but also in the way we cling to the past. Recalling good memories is natural, but when we constantly praise better days and complain about the present, we inadvertently create a gap between generations. One study found that people who live too much in nostalgia tend to be 30% more socially isolated than those who are open to the present. One man noticed that his grandchildren were talking to him less because he was always complaining that things are not the same anymore. When he tried to pay attention to the music they liked and learn about new movies, the conversations became more natural. Connecting with the present does not mean giving up the past, but finding a way for the past and present to coexist harmoniously. But perhaps what weighs most heavily on the human mind is not the good memories, but the resentment that cannot be let go. Holding on to resentment can be like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to be affected. According to research from Johns Hopkins University, people who hold on to resentment have a 20% higher risk of cardiovascular disease and chronic stress. A woman had been holding on to her anger towards her sister for 40 years. It was only when she decided to call to make peace that she realized how many years she had wasted just nurturing a negative emotion. When she put down the phone, she cried not because of sadness, but because of the relief of years of being weighed down. Unintentional habits can distance us from those we love most. But if we learn to praise instead of criticize, to be brave enough to talk about the future, to find joy in the present, and to let go of resentment. Anyone can change, not for others, but for ourselves. Because life is only truly complete when we learn to love both others and ourselves. There are conversations that start out exciting, but quickly turn into long monologues. As we age, we tend to retell familiar stories, emphasizing our own life experiences, forgetting that the other person wants to talk too. A study on communication shows that ideal conversations have a balanced ratio of talking to listening. But when one person does more than 70% of the talking, the listener gradually loses interest and feels tired. One woman shared that every time she talked to her friends, they would end it early or avoid it. It wasn't until a close friend bluntly said, "You talk too much. I don't have a chance to tell my story," that she realized the problem. Since she started listening more, she has found that conversations have become more interesting, and her connections with people have improved significantly. Communication is not just about talking, but also about listening. But sometimes, sacrifice can be a double-edged sword. There are people who always put others first, do everything for their family, but then feel resentful when they are not appreciated. They don't realize that excessive sacrifice can put pressure on those around them, making them feel indebted instead of grateful. One psychological study found that people who frequently make sacrifices without setting clear boundaries are 40% more likely to feel dissatisfied with their relationships than those who balance giving and receiving. A man who used to devote all his energy to his family, but as he got older, he felt lost and complained that his children were no longer interested in him. When asked if he had ever openly shared his wishes, he remained silent. Unspoken, implicit expectations are the cause of many disappointments. Learning to say no at the right time and set boundaries does not reduce love, but on the contrary, helps all relationships become healthier. Not only the spirit, but also the appearance reflects the attitude of life. When neglecting themselves and dressing sloppily, many people do not realize that they are sending a message that they have given up. According to a study on image psychology, people who care about their appearance have a 30% higher level of confidence and social interaction than those who do not pay attention to this. A woman once felt sad when her children and grandchildren rarely visited, thinking that she was being forgotten. But when she decided to change and take better care of herself, from her hair, her clothes, to her attitude, she realized that not only did others treat her more positively, but she also felt more optimistic about life. Taking care of yourself is not about making others look good, but it is a way to show respect for yourself and for life. And finally, one of the biggest barriers between generations is how we respond to the emotions of our children and grandchildren. When children talk about the pressures of work, love, or life, the common response of many older people is, "When I was your age, things were much harder." This seemingly harmless statement can make young people feel rejected. One study found that adults who had their emotions overlooked by their parents or grandparents tended to share less and were more likely to fall into a state of isolation as adults. A man who used to pride himself on being tough and not worrying about small things, when his daughter shared about her work pressure, he brushed it off and said, "There's nothing to worry about. I had a lot harder time than this in the past." Only when his daughter stopped talking did he realize that he had unintentionally hurt her. Learning to empathize and listen without judgment does not mean agreeing with everything, but creating a safe space for others to open up. There are habits that seem harmless, but silently push loved ones away. But the important thing is, it's never too late to change. Just a little more listening, a little more caring for yourself, a little understanding of others. All relationships will become warmer, more connected, and life will become more meaningful. Small habits, repeated over the years, can gradually create distance between us and the people we love most. No one intentionally hurts others, but sometimes unconscious behaviors make us unapproachable, losing a lot of joy and connection in life. The good news is, everything can change if we are willing to look back and adjust. Ask yourself, in the things you have shared, Do you recognize any behaviors that are familiar to you? If so, how would you change to improve your relationships with those around you? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments section. Who knows? Your story might be a source of inspiration for others. If you find this content useful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on meaningful shares about health, psychology, and life. Let's create a positive community together, where we constantly learn, change, and become the best versions of ourselves.